Jake had been stationed on the remote space station for months. He was just a soldier in the Galactic Defense Force, nothing special. His days were filled with routine patrols, checking for any signs of alien activity near the outer edges of known space. The space station was small, and the job was dull, but it kept him busy. He always thought he'd never experience anything out of the ordinary. That changed one. Quiet afternoon, Jake was in the mess hall, sipping on his coffee, when the station alarm blared. His heart skipped a beat. There was a warning for an unknown ship approaching the station. Commander's voice crackled over the intercom, telling everyone to prepare for a possible attack. It was rare for any alien ships to come this far into human territory, but when they did, it was usually a threat. Jake quickly grabbed his gear and ran to the command center. The crew there was already scrambling to make sense of the situation. They had no idea who the ship was or where it came from. The radar systems were showing nothing but static. It was as if the ship had appeared out of thin air. "Jake, you're on the front lines today," Commander Orcs said, his face serious. "Don't know what we're dealing with, but we need to be ready for anything." Jake nodded and suited up. The pressure was on. He wasn't trained for big battles, just small skirmishes and routine patrols, but today felt like everything was about to change. He joined a small team and headed toward the hangar bay, where the shuttle was waiting. The ship, an enormous craft, had stopped just outside the station's orbit. It was like nothing Jake had ever seen. It looked ancient, but also terrifyingly advanced. The ship's design was sleek and curved, with markings that none of the crew recognized. The shuttle launched into space, heading straight toward the unknown ship. As they approached, Jake's heart raced. The ship's surface was smooth, almost metallic, reflecting the light of distant stars. There was no sign of weapons or visible defenses, but Jake wasn't fooled. There was something strange about this vessel. Suddenly, the ship opened a hatch, and a beam of light shot out toward them. The shuttle shuddered as they were pulled in, unable to break free from the alien ship's tractor beam. "Hold on," shouted one of the crew members as they were yanked closer to the ship. Jake's mind raced. This was unlike any situation he'd ever faced. They were boarding an unknown alien ship, and none of them had any idea what awaited them. As the shuttle was pulled into the alien vessel's hangar, the crew quickly prepared for the worst. Jake unbuckled his seatbelt and grabbed his rifle. Wasn't sure what they'd find inside, but he had to be ready. They stepped out of the shuttle and into the hangar, which was eerily quiet. The walls of the ship were covered in strange symbols, and the air felt thick with mystery. "Stay sharp," Jake whispered to the others as they cautiously advanced through the dark corridor. The sound of their boots echoed down the hall. The ship was like a maze, each turn revealing something new and unsettling. It didn't feel like a place meant for humans. The atmosphere was cold, and the strange markings on the walls seemed to move in the dim light. And then they saw her. At the end of the hall stood a tall figure. Her skin was a deep shade of green, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural light. She wore a flowing outfit that seemed to shimmer with every movement. Her long silver hair hung down around her shoulders, and there was a sense of power about her that made Jake's heart race. This was no ordinary alien. This was the leader, the one in charge. As soon as she saw Jake, her eyes widened. She stepped forward. Into everyone's shock, she fell to her knees before him. The crew froze, unsure of what was happening. Jake stood still, completely bewildered. Why was she kneeling? It wasn't like anything he had ever heard of in his training. He was just a soldier, nothing special. There was no reason why this alien queen, if that's what she was, would bow to him. Who are you?" Jake managed to ask, his voice trembling slightly. The alien queen looked up at him. Her eyes filled with both reverence and something else he couldn't quite understand. She opened her mouth to speak, but her words were not in any language Jake knew. Before anyone could react, she raised her hand, and a soft glow surrounded them. A strange voice filled Jake's mind, speaking in perfect English. "You are the one," the voice said. "The one we have been waiting for?" Jake's mind raced. What was going on? Glanced around at the others, but they were just as confused as he was. The queen had knelt before him, and now she was speaking to him telepathically. There was no explanation for this. "Why?" Jake asked, trying to make sense of it all. "Why me?" The queen stood, still looking at Jake with awe. "You do not yet understand," she said softly, "but you will. The prophecy has foretold of your arrival. You are the one who will change everything." Jake's head spun. What was she talking about? He was just a soldier, and yet this powerful alien queen seemed to believe he was part of something much bigger. As the crew stood in stunned silence, Jake took a step back. He needed answers, but right now, all he could do was stand there and wonder why this was happening. Why had the alien queen knelt before him? What did the prophecy mean? There were so many questions, but for now, all he could do was listen. Something told him that this was only the beginning of an adventure far beyond his understanding. Jake stood in the alien ship's dimly lit chamber, still trying to understand what had just happened. The alien queen, who had knelt before him with such reverence, was now standing tall, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The strange voice in his mind kept echoing in his thoughts. "You are the one." He shook his head as if trying to clear away the confusion. "Tell me what you mean," Jake said, his voice more steady now. "Why did you kneel? I'm just a soldier." Queen regarded him carefully, her eyes soft, yet filled with something ancient. "You are much more than that," she said, her voice clear, but full of mystery. "I have been waiting for you for centuries." Jake frowned, feeling overwhelmed. "Waiting for me? What do you mean? I've never been to your world before. I'm just a human soldier." The queen gave a small, sad smile. "Yes, you are human. Not just any human. You are the one foretold in an ancient prophecy." Jake's confusion only deepened. "A prophecy? What kind of prophecy?" The queen turned and began to walk slowly, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. She led him toward a wall covered with strange symbols. The wall shimmered slightly, as if the symbols themselves were alive. She reached out and touched one of the symbols, and it glowed brighter. "Centuries ago," the queen began, her voice distant, "my people were at war with a race known as the Zyrathians. The war was brutal, and we were losing. Our elders, in their wisdom, discovered an ancient prophecy that spoke of a human who would come and bring peace to our worlds. But no one knew who this human was or when they would appear. They only knew that this human would have the power to unite the galaxy." Jake listened in silence, trying to grasp the weight of what she was saying. Could it really be true? Could he, just a regular soldier from Earth, really be the person in the prophecy? "I don't understand," Jake said, shaking his head. "Why me? I've never done anything special. I've just followed orders." The queen turned to face him, her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't place. "That is exactly why you are the one. You are not a king or a ruler. You are not a warrior seeking power. You are just you, and that is what will bring us peace." Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wanted to believe her, but it all felt too unreal. He was just an ordinary person, living an ordinary life. What could he possibly do to end a war that had raged for centuries? The queen seemed to sense his doubt. "The prophecy does not speak of power or glory. It speaks of a human who will come when the galaxy is at its darkest. The one who will find a way to unite species that have been at war for generations. The one who will lead us into a new era of peace." Jake thought for a moment. "But if the prophecy is real, why didn't anyone tell me about it? Why didn't I know about this before?" The queen sighed, a deep, sorrowful sound. "We tried to find you, but humans have been isolated for so long. The galaxy has changed, and your people have forgotten the old ways. The war continued, and we lost hope of ever finding you, until now." Jake's mind was racing. This was too much to take in. He was just a soldier, not a hero. What could he possibly do? He wanted to ask more questions, but before he could speak, the queen raised her hand. "There is more you must know," she said. "My people have been waiting for you, but the Zyrathians, our enemies, are not foolish. They have heard of the prophecy and will stop at nothing to prevent it from coming true. They believe that the arrival of the human foretold in the prophecy will mean their defeat. They will do everything in their power to destroy you, Jake. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He'd been on dangerous missions before, but this was something entirely different. So what do I do now? He asked, trying to hide the fear creeping. Into his voice, the Queen's expression hardened. You must join me, Jake. You must help me unite the galaxies and stop the war. Together we can defeat the Xyrithians and bring peace to the galaxy. Jake's mind was in turmoil. Could he really do this? Could he, just a regular human, really change the fate of the galaxy? I'm not a leader, Jake said quietly. I'm not some hero. I'm just a soldier. The Queen walked over to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was gentle, but there was a strength in it that he couldn't ignore. You are more than you think, Jake. You have the power within you. It's just waiting to be awakened. You have the heart of a leader, even if you don't see it yet. Jake felt a strange warmth spread through him. He had always been the quiet one, the one who followed orders without asking questions. But there was something about the Queen's words that made him feel like he was meant for something more. Something greater than himself. All right, he said, his voice steady. I'll help you. But I don't know how much I can do. The Queen smiled, a look of hope in her eyes. That is all I ask. We will start small, and together we will build something that will change the galaxy. Jake didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. His life had just changed. Forever. Jake woke up the next morning with a heavy mind. The night before, the alien Queen had told him that he was part of an ancient prophecy. He still couldn't fully grasp what that meant, but the idea of it lingered in his thoughts. How could he? A simple soldier from Earth be the one to end a centuries-old war between alien species? The Queen's ship was vast, its halls filled with strange symbols and alien technology. Jake had barely scratched the surface of what it all meant. But one thing was clear, he was no longer just a soldier. He had a role to play, even if he didn't understand it yet. After breakfast, the Queen summoned him to her quarters. Seated on a large chair made of some kind of smooth, translucent material, her silver hair shimmered in the light, and her eyes glowed with a quiet intensity. She looked regal, but there was something about her that made her seem more human than alien in that moment. Jake, she said, her voice calm, I can see that you still have many questions. I will answer what I can. Jake sat down across from her, trying to collect his thoughts. I don't understand why this prophecy has anything to do with me. I'm just ... me, a soldier. I've never led anything. I'm not a king or a warrior. Queen smiled softly, a touch of sadness in her expression. The prophecy does not require you to be a king or a warrior. It calls for someone who understands the value of peace. You are not meant to lead through power or force, but through unity and understanding. Jake looked at her, still unsure. But how can I do that? I've never even been to a planet like yours before. I don't know anything about your history, your people, or the war you're fighting. The Queen nodded slowly. That is true. You will learn. There is a deep connection between humans and my people. A connection that has been hidden for many generations. Jake's confusion deepened. What do you mean? The Queen rose from her chair and walked to a large holographic map in the corner of the room. She activated it, and it shimmered into life. A glowing representation of the galaxy appeared, with several star systems marked on it.
How long ago?
She began. Before the war, humans and my people were allies.
Ow.
Our species shared knowledge, trade, and culture. We were united in a way that few species have ever been. But then ... something happened. Jake watched as the map zoomed in on a particular system, one far from Earth. What happened? He asked, his curiosity piqued. The Queen's eyes darkened. The Xyrithians? They were once a peaceful people, but they turned to war. They sought to conquer our world and we fought back. But we were not strong enough. And in the chaos of the war, the alliance between humans and my people was broken. She looked at Jake with a mixture of sadness and hope. The prophecy speaks of the return of the human who will help heal the rift, who will restore the bond between our species and end the war. Jake didn't know what to say. The idea of being the key to such an enormous task was overwhelming. I'm not sure I can do this. I've never been a leader, never had to unite people. Can I possibly bring peace to two species who've been at war for so long? The queen turned to him, her gaze steady. It is not about leading armies or winning battles. It is about finding common ground, understanding the hearts of those around you. You will learn just as you've always learned, but now you will be learning with a purpose. Jake took a deep breath. But why me? Not someone else. There must be others who are more qualified. The queen placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle but firm. Because you are human, and the prophecy speaks of a human, not just any human, but one who has the ability to see beyond differences. You are the bridge between our people. The one who will unite us, not through force, but through understanding. Jake sat quietly for a moment, trying to process everything she had said. It was a lot to take in. One thing kept echoing in his mind. He was the one. Okay, he said finally, standing up. I'll try. I don't know if I can do this, but I'll try. The queen smiled, a hint of warmth in her eyes. That is all I ask. Over the next few days, Jake began to learn more about the queen's people. He was shown their history, their struggles, and the painful reality of the war they had been fighting for centuries. The queen's people were proud, resilient, and honorable, but their strength had come at a great cost. Many had lost loved ones, entire families, and their homes to the war. Jake listened, learning from them, but he still struggled to understand how he, of all people, could make a difference. But the more he heard, the more he realized that the queen's people were not so different from his own. They wanted peace, just like humans did. They wanted their families to be safe, just like humans did. They were not so different after all. As the days passed, Jake began to feel the weight of his responsibility. The queen was right. This was not about fighting wars or commanding fleets. It was about understanding, about bringing people together who had been torn apart by fear and hatred. And maybe, just maybe, Jake could do that. But he still had a long way to go. The next morning, Jake was summoned to the queen's war room. The mood on the ship was different now. No longer was it just about learning and understanding the prophecy. The reality of the situation had hit hard. The galaxy was at war, and Jake was right in the middle of it. When Jake entered the war room, the queen was already there, standing in front of a large map of the galaxy. The screen was filled with glowing dots that moved slowly, showing the positions of various fleets. Jake, the queen said, her voice serious, I need you to see this. Jake stepped closer, his eyes scanning the screen. There were clusters of dots marking the locations of different fleets, some human, some alien. But one group of dots stood out, a massive concentration of enemy ships moving toward the queen's home planet. That's the Zyrathians. The queen explained, her tone cold. They've launched their final assault. If they succeed, we'll lose everything. Jake felt his heart race. He had heard about the Zyrathians, but seeing the scale of their forces made everything feel much more real. We can't let them reach your home, Jake said, trying to sound confident. What's the plan? Queen turned to him, her face showing no fear, only determination. The Zyrathians are strong. They have superior numbers, and they know we are not united. They will use that to their advantage. They will try to divide the galaxy, turn species against each other. That is their greatest weapon, chaos. Jake thought for a moment, trying to understand. So we can't fight them head on. Unless we are prepared to lose everything, the queen replied. We don't have the strength to fight them directly. We have something they don't. Jake raised an eyebrow. What's that? The queen's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment she was silent. Then she spoke, her voice calm but powerful. Unity. Jake blinked, not fully understanding. Unity? Yes, she said. Yeah, the Zyrathians believe they can break us. They think if they can get us to fight each other, they will win. But they don't realize that we are stronger together. They underestimate the power of unity. That is what we must use against them. Jake nodded slowly. So we bring all the species together and show them that we can stand as one? Queen smiled slightly. Exactly, but it won't be easy. The Xyrathians will try to manipulate every situation. They'll use lies, threats, and fear to turn us against each other. They've done it before, and they will try again. Late felt a surge of determination. The Queen was right. They couldn't win if they were divided. So, what's our first move? We need to send a message, the Queen said firmly. We'll strike at the heart of their fleet. Not with force, but with a message of unity. We will show the galaxy that we stand together. Jake's mind raced. Strike at the heart of the enemy. It sounded dangerous, but it also sounded like the only way to show the Xyrathians that they couldn't divide them. What do we need to do? Jake asked, his voice steady. The Queen nodded. You will be part of the first team we will send. A small covert mission to infiltrate their flagship. We'll send a message directly to their leaders. We'll show them that we are not afraid and we are not divided. Jake felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was real now. They were going to strike the Xyrathians where it would hurt the most, count the heart of their operation. We'll need the right allies, Jake said, his thoughts racing. Who can we trust to join us? The Queen's gaze softened. I know who will stand with us. I've already started reaching out to our closest allies. But you, Jake, you must speak to them. You must convince them that we are stronger together. Nodded again, understanding the gravity of the situation. He had always followed orders, but now he would be the one to lead. He would be the one to unite species who had been at war for centuries, as the Queen made her preparations. Jake felt his pulse quicken. He wasn't sure how he would do it, but he knew he had to try. This was his chance to make a difference, to bring peace to a galaxy torn apart by war. The next few days were a blur of activity. Jake traveled to different parts of the ship, meeting with various representatives of the Queen's allies. Some were hesitant, unsure if they could trust a human, but Jake's words began to have an effect. Slowly, one by one, they agreed to join the Queen's cause. Jake found himself speaking to leaders from different species, each with their own fears, hopes, and doubts. He spoke of unity, of peace, and of the future they could build together. It wasn't easy. Many of them had seen the destruction the war had caused, and some weren't ready to trust. But Jake kept pushing, kept reminding them that the Xyrathians were their true enemy, not each other. As the days passed, Jake felt the weight of his responsibility grow. He was no longer just a soldier. He was the bridge between species, the one who could bring them together. And that terrified him. But there was no turning back now. The Queen's fleet was ready. The time had come to send their message to the Xyrathians. Jake took a deep breath and boarded the ship that would carry him and his team into enemy territory. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew one thing. This was just the beginning. As the ship left the Queen's homeworld behind, Jake looked out at the stars. The galaxy was on the brink of change, and for the first time he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. Jake stood at the helm of the ship, watching as the stars passed by in a blur of light. The mission was clear, but the weight of what they were about to do sat heavily on his chest. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but there was no turning back. The Queen's fleet was on its way to the heart of the Xyrathian forces. They would soon deliver the message they had all been waiting for. The galaxy was at a tipping point. And Jake felt as though the fate of many worlds rested on his shoulders. The ship's walls hummed with activity as the crew made their final preparations. Jake's team, a group of elite soldiers and diplomats from various species, was ready for the mission. They would infiltrate the Xyrathian flagship, the heart of their fleet, and deliver a message of unity. It wasn't going to be easy. The Xyrathians were powerful, ruthless, and had no intention of backing down. But Jake had learned something. Important in the past few days, unity was stronger than fear, and it was the only way they could win this war. The Queen had prepared them all, teaching Jake how to speak to different species and understand their fears and hopes. He had spoken to leaders, convinced them to put aside their differences and join forces. It hadn't been easy, but it was beginning to pay off. The galaxy was starting to come together. Jake was pulled from his thoughts when the door to the command room slid open. Okay, the Queen walked in, her presence filling the room. She was calm, composed, but there was something different about her today. She had always been strong, but today she radiated determination. "Jake," she said softly, walking toward him, "we are ready." Jake nodded. "I know, but I still don't understand how this will work. How do we make the Zyrethians listen?" "To us?" The Queen smiled, a slight but reassuring gesture. "It's not about making them listen, it's about showing them we are united. When we strike at their flagship, we will send a message. They will understand that we are not afraid of them, that we will fight for the future." Jake swallowed hard. "And if they don't listen," the Queen's expression grew serious, "then we will fight. But remember, Jake, this isn't just about battle. This is about showing them that we are stronger together. We must remain united, no matter what happens." Jake took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. The mission was risky, and he knew they might not all make it back. But he also knew that this was their only chance. The war had gone on for too long. Too many lives had been lost. It was time to end it. The ship continued its journey, and the tension in the air grew thicker with each passing minute. Jake spent the time preparing his team, checking their equipment, and making sure everyone was ready for the mission ahead. There was no room for mistakes. The Zyrethians wouldn't give them a second chance. Finally, the moment arrived. The ship neared the Zyrethian fleet, and Jake's team gathered in the small briefing room. The plan was simple: infiltrate the flagship, deliver the message of unity, and get out. They would use stealth and strategy, not brute force. The Zyrethians were stronger, but they didn't have the same advantages. Jake and his team had the element of surprise. "We have one shot at this," Jake said, looking around the room at his team. "If we fail, it could mean the end of everything. But if we succeed, we can change the course of the galaxy. Let's make it count." His team nodded, their expressions determined. They were ready. They had to be. The Queen was right. This wasn't just about fighting. It was about showing the galaxy that they could stand together, no matter their differences. It was about proving that unity could be stronger than fear. As they approached the Zyrethian flagship, Jake's heart raced. He could see the massive ship in the distance, a towering behemoth that sent a shiver down his spine. But he wasn't afraid, not anymore. He was ready to do whatever it took to end this war. The ship landed silently in the hangar of the Zyrethian flagship. Jake and his team moved quickly, their steps quiet as they made their way to the control room. The halls were empty, a sign that the Zyrethians were preparing for something big. Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. Time was running out. They reached the control room without being detected. The Zyrethian leaders were gathered around a large table, discussing their next move. Jake's team positioned themselves around the room, ready to strike if needed. The Queen's voice came through the comms, her words clear and steady. "It's time, Jake. Send the message." Jake nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. He approached the communication console and activated it. A holographic projection of the Queen appeared before the Zyrethian leaders. The Zyrethians froze, their eyes narrowing as they saw the Queen's image. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the Queen's voice echoed through the room. "Zyrethians, we are no longer your enemies. We've come to show you that the galaxy is not divided. We are united. If you choose peace, we will stand together. But if you choose war, we will fight to the end. This is your choice." The message was simple, but it carried weight. The Zyrethians stood in shock, unsure of how to respond. They had never been faced with such unity before. Jake and his team waited, knowing that the fate of the galaxy rested on this moment. The Zyrethians could choose to fight, or they could choose peace. But whatever they chose, it was up to Jake and his team to make sure the galaxy had a chance. As the room remained tense, Jake took a deep breath. He had done everything he could. Now, it was up to the Zyrethians to decide what came next. The shuttle glided silently through space, its engines purring as they made their way back to the Queen's flagship. Jake sat in the seat, his eyes fixed on the star-filled sky outside the window. His mind was still reeling from the events that had just unfolded. The mission had been successful. They had delivered the Queen's message to the Xyrethians. Now they had to face the consequences. Would the message be enough? The galaxy finally unite? Or would the war continue, ripping them apart? Jake didn't know. All he could do was hope. As the shuttle docked with the Queen's flagship, Jake could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. His team had done their part, but the real test was yet to come. Would the Xyrethians respond to the Queen's call for peace, or would they choose war? The door to the shuttle opened, and Jake stepped into the docking bay, where the Queen was waiting for him. Her calm presence was a reminder that this was more than just a battle. It was about something far greater. "Jake," she said, her voice steady as always, "you've done well. You and your team have shown courage." Jake nodded, but there was a heaviness in his heart. "We did what we could, but I don't know if it's enough. The Xyrethians won't just give up because we asked them to." The Queen's eyes softened. "You're right. But you've done more than just deliver a message. You've given them a choice, a chance to choose peace instead of war. That is what matters." Jake wasn't so sure. He had seen the Xyrethians. Ruthless power. Could they really change? Could any species change after so many years of war? "Now we wait," the Queen continued. "The Xyrethians will respond in their own time, but we must be ready for whatever happens." As Jake followed the Queen through the halls of her ship, he could feel the weight of the galaxy's future hanging in the balance. The Queen had been preparing for this moment for years, but Jake had only recently realized the true importance of it. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was part of something far bigger than himself. The Queen led Jake to the command center, where the leaders of the United Species were gathered. It was a mix of beings from all over the galaxies. Familiar to Jake, others strange and foreign. They were here to discuss the next steps, to decide how to move forward. "We've united the strongest allies we have," the Queen said as she addressed the room. "But the Xyrethians are still a threat. We must remain vigilant." One of the leaders, a tall alien with green skin and sharp features, stood up. "We cannot afford to wait any longer. Xyrethians are already preparing for another assault. We need to strike first." Jake could feel the tension rise in the room. It was clear that not everyone was ready to trust the Xyrethians. Many of them had suffered at their hands. And while Jake understood the desire for revenge, he also knew that taking the fight to the Xyrethians would only make things worse. "We can't keep fighting forever." Jake spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "The message has been sent. Now, we have to wait for the Xyrethians to decide. If they want peace, we'll take it. But if they want war, we'll be ready." There was silence in the room as the leaders exchanged glances. Finally, the Queen spoke, her voice clear and strong. "Jake is right. We have done all we can for now. We wait. And if war comes, we will fight. But we will do so united as one. Galaxy One, people." The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't out of doubt. It was a quiet understanding that they had done the right thing. The message had been sent, and now it was up to the Xyrethians. Later that evening, Jake sat alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the edge of something big. The future of the galaxy was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Jake felt like they had a chance to bring peace to a war-torn galaxy. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime at the door. Jake stood and opened it to find the Queen standing there, her expression unreadable. "We've received a message," she said. Her voice steady, but tinged with something Jake couldn't quite place. "It's from the Xyrethians." Jake's heart skipped a beat. The moment had come. They walked together to the command center where the rest of the leaders were gathered. The screen flickered to life, and the image of the Xyrethian leader appeared on the screen. His eyes narrowed as he spoke. "We have received your message, Queen. Your words are clear. You offer us peace." The room fell silent. Jake watched the Xyrethian leader closely, his mind racing. Would they accept the peace offer, or would they turn their backs on it? The Xyrethian leader continued, his voice low and tense. but peace is not something we offer lightly. If you want it, you must prove that you are strong enough to enforce it. We will give you a chance to prove your strength. But if you fail, war will continue. Jake felt a surge of anger rise in him. The Xyrethians had made it clear they were testing them, pushing them to see if they were truly united. But the queen remained calm, her expression unchanged. "We will prove our strength, Xyrathian leader," she said, her voice unwavering, "and we will do so without war." The Xyrathian leader didn't respond immediately. He studied the queen for a long moment before nodding. "Very well," he said. "We will give you a chance, but be warned. If you fail, the consequences will be dire." The screen went black, and the room was filled with a tense silence. Jake looked around the room at the faces of the galaxy's leaders. They had a chance. The Xyrethians had given them a chance. Now it was up to them to prove that they could live up to it.